Hello friends, Average Joe here. Now, I'm injured, and if you're like me and running is your whole life and your whole personality, then being injured from running can be a real struggle. What was such a big part of your life is now on ice, is now on pause whilst you try and recover, and that can have a very big effect on your mental well-being. So let's sit down and let's discuss how we can stay sane when we're injured. First up is to acknowledge that you're injured. When we do get injured, it's very easy for a lot of us to kind of glaze over it as if it isn't a big deal. Even if we physically can't run anymore, we won't really appreciate what has happened to us. And this can have a very big negative mental effect. A lot of the time we won't even realize it's having a bad effect on our mental well-being. So to avoid that, we must make sure that we acknowledge it, whether that is just taking the time out of our day to understand exactly what has happened in our body, what is this injury, really try and come to terms with what this means to us. Are we out for 3 weeks? Are we out for 6 weeks? Are we out for even longer? And also emotionally come to terms with the injury. Whether you need to cry, whether you need to be angry, it's okay to do so. It's very important to do so. Running is a big part of your life and you're having to put it on hold. That is a really sad situation. So take a few days to really come to terms with what has happened, and then we can move on to getting your injury sorted. Alrighty, number 2 on the list is to shift your mindset. So when you were running, you were likely thinking that you were an expert in running, which of course you were, but now of course you cannot be that expert in running. So we need to shift that mindset to become an expert in recovery. You can't control your injury, that has happened now, but what you can control is how you recover from your injury. What can you do to make sure you are out there on the roads again as soon as possible? And you can do this physically through some physio exercises, you can do this mentally through some meditation or coming to terms with your injury as I mentioned earlier, and even just simply manifesting that you are an expert in recovery, that you are recovering quickly. It really does have a positive effect on the injury recovery process. Swiftly moving on to number 3 in the list, and I think this is one of the most important, and it's to keep your schedule. So let's just use an example that you were a morning runner, so you would wake up at, let's say, 6 a.m. before work, get a run in, and then you're off to work. But of course you're now injured, so you're not going to be getting up early to go running. What we want to keep is the schedule of getting up early as if we were going to go running. We can replace that with any alternatives to running or just simply getting up at an early time. And this is more for when you are able to run again, because when you can get back out there on the roads, well, you're going to be getting up early again to go running. And if you let that schedule slide a little bit, well, it's just going to add another obstacle on your journey back to running. Returning to running from injury is already difficult as it is, so we want to remove as many obstacles as possible. And this lets us move on to one that's kind of linked to the previous one, and that is the alternatives to running. Now, of course, this very much depends on what type of injury you have, but just to list a few, we have swimming, biking, strength training, plyometric work, and also just simply walking. Doing anything to keep your cardio levels consistent will make it a lot easier to return to running. Don't get me wrong, it will be difficult returning to running, but this is just removing another obstacle or lessening the impact of that obstacle. And doing these alternatives to running will get you out in the fresh air, which is always a positive thing, and it can also help clear your mind of any other stresses in your life, and why would we not do that? And the final one on the list is to think long term. You are currently injured, but you're not going to be injured forever. You're going to be back out there, you're going to be running. So we need to make sure that we're focused on that goal. That is a lot easier said than done. Some things that have helped me focus on the long term is to sign up to a race, whether that's a year away, whether that's 9 months away, just in the future. Because by having a race that's in the distant future, that is having a positive psychological effect on my mind. It's something to aim for. It's something for me to manifest that I'm going to be out there on the road of that race, running that race and crossing that finish line. And that can really help us to take a step back and take a wider view at everything, because if I've got a race coming up in half a year, then what do I need to do right now to make sure I recover properly and efficiently so then I can run that race and cross that finish line and get that medal. And there we have it, guys. Those are some tips to make sure that we are keeping sane when we're injured from running. I hope these tips help any of you that are injured out there. They're certainly helping me whilst I'm injured. I hope your recovery is going very well. I've been the Average Joe, and I shall see you next time.